I'd like to open. I will lead the.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Could I have a roll call, please?
Vice Mayor Harrington?
Present.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Cook?
Here.
Councilmember Henley?
Here.
Mayor Agramonte?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Could I have ask our city manager to report on our closed session, please?
Thank you, Mayor Agramonte. We had 2 closed session items, and there is no public report out. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. So, could I ask for someone for a council member or vice mayor to approve the agenda? However, I would like to change public comments to 6 o'clock, more appropriate for people when they're entering the room.
I would like to make a motion to approve the agenda with the exception of postponing the general public comment until 6 p.m.
Thank you. May I have a
Second.
And roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Harrington?
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Mayor Agramonte?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion
And
carries
so,
unanimously.
Yes.
Why we're doing that for the crowd?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Well, we have delayed public comment until 6 o'clock because we know that people can't get here early as some of our meetings take place for certain purposes. So what we have done is decided that we will leave public comments for 6 p.m. when people have ample time and know those are good, the correct or appropriate starting time. And that's why we've done that. Let's see. Read it. Okay. At this time, members of the public may, well, I'm moving that to
Yeah,
6.
so we'll go to meeting.
So I want to know if there are any dedications from our city council.
I have one.
Thank you.
So this is, I'd like to dedicate the meeting to Tom Mello. He's the agricultural buyer for Amy's Kitchen, who passed away a couple of weeks ago in a tragic car accident. And worked with him for many, many years. And good guy, good Sonoma County guy. And a lot of the fruit trees you see around Sonoma County are a result of his work, and his propagation. So thank you.
That's pretty bad. Awful. Thank you. Thank you very much. And at this point, I have a presentation, Bells of Peace. Thanks to Gary Edwards, who asked us to do this. If there's anyone here for that
It's
group.
going to be me.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
Sorry, General Myatt asked me to step in.
City of Sonoma Proclamation, Bells of Peace, a World War I Centennial Armistice Remembrance. Whereas the tolling of bells is a traditional expression of honor and remembrance, and whereas a century ago, 4.7 million American sons and daughters put on their uniforms to serve our nation and the world in this global conflict, and whereas men and women from our town, our own fair city of Sonoma, served selflessly and honorably in World War I, and whereas there were 375,000 American casualties, including 516 deaths, and whereas on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, an armistice to the fighting was declared, and whereas the U.S. World War I Centennial Commission has called upon all Americans across the nation to honor and remember those who served, and whereas the city wishes to recognize Major General J. Michael Myatt, for promoting public awareness in this historical and monumental event in American history. Therefore, I, Madeline Agramonte, Mayor of the City of Sonoma, do hereby call all residents and institutions of the City of Sonoma to toll the bells in remembrance of the armistice at 11 a.m. on November 11, 2018. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Sonoma to be affixed this 5th day of November 15th. And I'm presenting this to Gary Edwards.
Thank you, Madeline. So even though I'm personally not a veteran, my great-grandfather fought on the Maginot Line in World War I. And Mike Myatt asked me he tried to make it tonight, but he's still running the Marines Memorial in San Francisco. So he asked me to come up and accept this on the behalf of the Marines. We also just held the Marines birthday ball at Klein Cellars, or Jacuzzi Winery, on Saturday night, where the cake is cut by the oldest Marine and the youngest Marine. Quite a beautiful ceremony. It's been held there for about 7 years now, and they've raised over $100,000 each year for wounded vets and their families. So on behalf of Mike, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. So now I'm moving on to the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be, all items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be acted upon by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the council, staff, or public request specific items to be removed or for separate action. At this time, council may decide to change the order of the agenda. And so what is the wish of the council?
I'd like to pull item 4.7.
Okay, anyone else? No? So I'll go out to the public to see if we have anything. I don't see anyone rise, so I'm bringing it back to the city council.
I make a motion to approve items 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, 4.5, and 4.6 of the consent calendar.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Harrington,
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards,
Yes.
Councilmember Cook,
Aye.
Councilmember Henley,
Aye.
Mayor Agramonte.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. And at this point, I believe we have the 4.7 pulled, and I believe that's going to be open for discussion. So I'd like to turn that over to the city manager, please.
So we'll be looking at 4.7, approve a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sonoma denying an appeal, approving findings and adoption of a mitigated negative declaration for the Sonoma Gateway Mixed-Use Development Project located at 870 Broadway, APN 018412025 and 018412030, and a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sonoma denying an appeal and approving a use permit, tentative map, and related entitlements for the Sonoma Gateway Project as revised dated September 24th, 2018, located at 870 Broadway, APN 018412025 and 018412030.
Thank you. I'd like to turn that over to the city manager.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is ask Kathy Peace, our contract planner, to go ahead and provide a brief overview about this item. And we will then treat this as a regular council item.
Thank you. I have a question. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't ask. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. So I'm just wondering, because I want to bring up the fact about a potential conflict I have and whether you prefer that to be done at the end of the presentation of the staff or before.
Based on the state conflict of interest regulations, if you have a conflict of interest, you need to, since the item has been pulled from the consent calendar, declare the conflict and the reason for the conflict and then leave the room.
I think, Ms. Nebb, you're not informed about this matter because I don't have a conflict for sure. There's been a question about getting advice from the FPPC about a potential conflict.
So the issue is, the concern would be relative to that issue is if
I'm only asking for procedural advice if you want me to bring it up now or at the end of Ms. Pease's statement. I'm not asking for legal advice from you about whether or not I have a conflict.
Okay. It would be best to bring it up now.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, as the case may be for me, after the first hearing on this matter, after the last hearing on this matter, but before today, I learned that my office building where I have my law office was sold. And as a result of that, I moved my law office. And the space that I acquired is in Len Tillum's building, which happens to be the property right next door to this Broadway project. And so as a result of that, I spoke to the city attorney. The type of interest you have, whether it's a leasehold and who it's with and how long it is, determines whether or not you have a conflict if you're in proximity like that. Originally, when I spoke to the city attorney, he believed that I did not have a conflict and that I could go ahead and vote. And later, after we met in person, he advised me that the best course of action was to get a formal letter of advice from the FPPC before proceeding. So I would like to have this matter continued 21 days so that I can get formal advice pursuant to the advice of our city attorney, Jeff Walter.
Oh, what am I doing? So I guess at this point, do we have any comments or questions? Is that correct?
So at this point, I feel that in light of the difficulties we've had with appeals and wanting to be on firm ground moving forward, then it would be good for us to be confident as to whether all of our members could vote. But as far as that decision, it seems if that's going to be a decision made by the council, it should be made probably sooner than later. So I don't know if there's any other interest of the council, but in light of all the difficulties we've had, particularly this project, I would rather us be on very firm ground moving forward as to everyone that could vote verified. So, especially because there seems to not be a clear guidance coming from our city's attorney's office.
Gary?
Well, considering that I will not be on this council in 21 days, I believe that we should just move forward with it and get this done.
David, do you have a...
Well, let's do the math. 21 days. Today is the 5th, so the 26th, you would still be here for one more meeting.
Well, just a ceremonial meeting at the end.
No business.
So I'm looking to the city attorney if she wants to modify anything I'm saying here. So when you are asking the FPPC for a formal request, the website talks about a 21 days, and they will get back to you. My experience is that they're not always able to say yes or no within that 21 days. Sometimes it does take longer. So I think that is a piece that council needs to understand. What we try to do, as council knows, is when there is a potential conflict with a member, we work with city attorney's office, we work with planning, we provide kind of a robust set of information to provide to the FPPC so that they have good information working with the council member so that they can hopefully have enough information to make a decision kind of during the first round. That being said, sometimes it does take more than 21 days, and I know of situations where that has occurred. So it is in the prerogative of the council if you want to move forward tonight and consider the resolutions in front of you. It is also the prerogative of the council to continue. If you continue, it is, we're hopeful it would happen before the November 19th meeting. So you're probably looking at the December 3rd meeting, but there isn't a guarantee that it would happen before. It does say 21 days, and 21 days would put it to the December 3rd meeting, where hopefully there would be a response back and you would know. But that's the information I have. Is there anything
Could I? Oh,
Yeah, I guess I have a question to the my colleague who pulled it. If we did delay this to December 3rd, would that be fine even if the FPPC did not state by that time?
I mean, I guess if the concern, I would like to get the FPPC letter in order to participate in this matter. There are some outstanding issues, I think, that require some amount of discussion. For example, the motion that was made is not in conformity with the findings that are here. There's some, issues. So I don't think it is a consent item. Why could this not be set on a special meeting when the FPPC letter comes back? It doesn't have to be on December 3rd. It can be at any date.
It could be, again, that's the prerogative of the council. I think as Councilmember Edwards said, again, he is not running for re-election, so we will have a new council member being seated, and that would be the December 10th meeting. But if council wanted to set a special meeting, that is within your prerogative.
Gary?
So probably being the council person with the most letters to the FPPC, because I actually own property on the plaza and have been involved in several letters with the cheese factory, with all kinds of projects, with Broadway Trees, the hotel on East Napa, et cetera, et cetera. I don't see, because you have an office with Lentellum, that's a big deal anyway. Your office at Helga Bruckner was 600 or 700 feet away, whatever the number is, but it's like, I don't see that as a conflict. So it's...
I met with Jeff Walter. He's the city attorney. He told me I absolutely, unequivocally need a letter from the FPPC.
Well, I guess the thing is that I think it's unfair to folks that come before us when a council does change, because the FPPC doesn't always come back in 21 days. They might come back in 2.5 months. So I just don't think that's fair to the developer or anybody else for that matter.
So could I have an opinion, please, on this? What are our choices here?
Your choices in front of you are again, the item in front of you is 2 resolutions, an environmental CEQA resolution and the entitlement resolution to move forward and approve the Gateway project. And so you could take those actions and approve that. There's also, if you want to continue the item, you could continue the item as well.
So, yes.
I mean, with everything we do, I feel like procedure is the most important thing that we do of everything. And it is, sure, somebody who is, in the majority side of things, it can be frustrated when somebody who's voting differently, wants to do things correctly. But the fact is, I don't think it should matter what your vote is. I think it all should matter that we are fully confident that every single person and every vote is proper, and that's bigger than any specific decision that we make. It's just that we have to make everything as legitimate as possible. And I think it was one thing if it was just sort of like leaving it until the last minute, but it doesn't seem like that's what it is in this case. So I think it would be irresponsible to proceed. I mean, what I guess people are asking is just perhaps the vice mayor to just recuse herself, just not participate. But I think anybody could have something come up with things, and sometimes the timing is different. And I think that procedure is more important than any vote that we take.
Gary?
Well, I've been advised that on the wine tasting rooms that I probably could get through the FPPC on that as well, but I've chosen not to and stepped away from that completely out of an abundance of caution. So that decision is being made by 4 council people, and I don't see this as a decision that's actually a bigger decision than this. And I've stepped away just out of abundance of caution. Maybe that's something that Vice Mayor Harrington should think about.
Well, I want to.
If you're concerned about it.
I care very deeply about this. I do want to participate. I think as an elected official, it's my duty to participate if I'm allowed to, but I need an FPPC opinion to clarify it. And I think, that's my obligation as an elected official, is to vote on all the matters that are before us if I'm ethically allowed to do it. But I have to get an FPPC opinion. So I respect that that's the decision you made, but I feel differently about it.
David? No. Well, yes.
I was just going to say you are obligated now that you've removed the item from the consent calendar to also hear from the public. So I just wanted to remind the council to open it to the public.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to remind the council that you'll need to open, since the item has been pulled from consent, you'll need to open it to the public for public comment on this item.
Okay.
Veronica,
All right.
sorry, I just want to
okay.
ask a question though. I mean, I want to be clear, if there'll be one public comment on this, or are we going to do a public comment on the question of continuance and a public comment if council decides to hear the issue?
Well, the motion before you right now is the question of continuance of the item, correct? There's no motion. Okay, so the item, but the comment would be one public comment on both at that point. The item, whichever way the council wants to address it, is okay.
I think okay.
The issue, I think, is if, and this was what I was going to say before, if you are found to have a conflict of interest, you should not participate in the question of the continuance. If you're not found to have one,
I'm going to
then-
take it out to the public. I think it's important to hear what they have to say.
Greetings. Richard Silver, 95 Bernhardt Avenue. Comment one. Councilman Edwards, it was your choice to not run for re-election. Had you chosen to do so and were successful, you would have an opportunity to express your opinion and your vote on this and any number of other matters. Having said that, Councilman Harrington is a licensed attorney in the state of California.
Oh, boy.
For her own protection as a member of the council as well as an attorney, when she seeks advice of the city attorney and that individual says to her, I recommend you take this advice and follow it, to me it's moot. And therefore, I believe that all participants on the matter should be able to vote when the matter has reached a position that for everyone, the city attorney, the persons pro and con, and the full council can take a vote. It appears to me that today that will not happen, and procedure is paramount. This is a country you follow rule of law. In this chamber, you follow the procedures that have been established. My opinion is, respectfully, sir, you follow the procedures. Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I correct that this is commentary on the issue of the continuance only? Okay. I just want to say that I feel that the committee of relationships on the council would strongly lean in the direction of giving a fellow member of the council the opportunity to get a ruling on the FPPC before you take this matter up. If any of the other members of the council are in a situation like this in the future, I would expect, regardless of opinions on the matter that's ultimately going to be decided, that out of respect for each other and the desire to continue to support each other and your ability to fulfill your role, that delaying or continuing an item in order to provide for the opportunity of an opinion of the FPPC should be in the absence of an issue of critical emergency, should be just standard operating procedure. It's polite, it's courteous, it's respectful to your fellow council members. The timing of it, from Gary's perspective, is lousy, but the fact is that we can't govern the timing of things. So I think that just from the standpoint of normal and standard council decorum, the appropriate thing to do would be to grant the request for a continuance and give a fellow council member a chance to get the opinion necessary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Louis Braun, 871 First Street West. Vice Mayor Harrington is a representative of many people in Sonoma. Her voice should be heard. We should follow the process and follow the rules. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any others that would like to speak?
Thank you very much. I'm Jennifer Hernandez. I'm counsel for the applicant. I appreciate the opportunity to address you on just this one unexpected issue and wanted to bring to your attention this is actually the third vote of this council on this project. The very first one was to approve the plan. And this project implements the plan. It doesn't change the development character that's already approved in the plan. The second vote was to deny the appeal. That vote was a 3-2 vote, which is always tough. It's always tough at a human level to not have consensus. But we also have a huge housing crisis, and we have rules about what we're supposed to do. And one of the things we're supposed to do is implement approved plans. And this project implements approved plans. It meets every objective criteria that this council has voted to enforce. We have no new FPPC issue. The least opportunity that you have outside the 2 or 3 blocks away, as I understand it, which is the position you were in when you first took a vote, is still a question of, is your particular property interest or economic interest materially affected by implementing this plan? And the answer is, it's not a bright line standard. Moving next door doesn't mean it is a problem. Staying a few blocks away doesn't mean it's not a problem. You have a lease in a property that has already been developed next to a property that has been zoned and approved by this council for this use. And we actually think that there's also, as you know, perhaps, an opportunity, but also an obligation. If you feel like you're conflicted, you need to recuse yourself is fine. But to delay a project that has actually gone on for many, 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 many months, that implements your plan, that has been adjusted to further implement your plan, based on a second read, the adoption of the resolution that implements the vote you took last time, where with respect, you lost that vote. So now it feels like, of course, the delay is another opportunity to revisit the loss of that vote. So I would urge you to not use this new leasehold, which is of a single office building in an existing building on a block that's already been planned for this exact use, with an FPPC process which is quite backed up, is likely to last several months, and frankly feels like the wrong end of a vote being delayed. And it's not procedurally required, it's not legally required, and we would ask, frankly, for a vote today on this implementation of the vote you took last time. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a problem with the clock, but thank you.
Hi, Scott Hunter, 625, Scott Hunter, 625 First Street West. We've been at this a very, very long time. You voted 3-2 last time to approve the project, and as our council just pointed out, the project's been approved. This is merely the paperwork that sets it in motion. A quorum of this council is 3 votes. And you were in the, you were against this project, have been against this project, so it is pretty safe to say which way you'll come down on it. I urge you, please, as this town needs things to move. We've done everything you've asked, we've done it every time. So I ask that you please go forward with a vote. And Amy, it's up to you if you want to recuse or not recuse. But a leasehold in a single office at a next door office building, I think we all know what the FPPC would come up and say. Please take your vote tonight.
Logan Harvey, 578 Estamadera Drive. I think the previous 2 comments kind of illustrate why it's so important that this really get adjudicated in the correct way. And we do have a city that's facing a lawsuit currently with regard to a previous project that we've had. We've had multiple appeals and a lot of problems with every project going forward. And so I think it's important that this city protect itself. Now, we've had an attorney speak previously that she thinks that this is not a conflict of interest. But again, the city attorney, the attorney that represents the city, says that it very well may be. And this illustrates to me really the point of why we need a second opinion, to have somebody who is an authority on the subject rule on whether or not this is a conflict of interest. I believe that Vice Mayor Harrington represents a large portion of our community, and I think that her voice should be represented on this project. And I think that absolutely we should wait until the FPPC rules on whether or not Amy Harrington is allowed to vote on this. Thank you.
So, do we have any others from the audience who would like to speak? Seeing no one rise and approach the dais.
Well, I was in the majority to deny the appeal, but with these new criterias with Amy Harrington or Vice Mayor Harrington, I respect my colleague. If she's asking for a little more time to be able to participate in this vote, I believe that we need to do the right thing procedurally. I will be making a motion, if everyone else is done, of a continuance to December 3rd on 4.7.
I'll second that.
I'd like to make comments before I take a vote. Okay, so I heard what you said, Councilmember Edwards. I have to trust my colleagues, in spite of the fact that you were no votes on this project. I have to trust that this is not a strategy, and this is actually a request of the FPPC. Getting information from the attorney doesn't necessarily mean that you have to take his advice. That's the word, advice. The issue for me is when you are a developer that comes to Sonoma, they've been having some rough times lately. I represent the city of Sonoma, and I represent the people. I don't know what my polls say, but I'm just saying I represent the people of Sonoma. And here's what I find disturbing. When you say no to a developer, they have loans. They have employees. They have vendors that they have to set aside, move contracts. There are big decisions that happen to business, and this is the thing that's an issue for me. As I said, I hope it isn't a strategy. And I hope, because of how I respect my colleagues, then I will accept the continuance. I am not happy about it because I don't think it's an honorable thing to do tonight. Roll call.
So, to me, this is a slap in the face of affordable housing. This is a council that claims they want to work on affordable housing and do something about affordable housing. And basically nothing's been done while I've been on council. And this is just it's a delay tactic as far as I'm concerned. This is something where a resolution was brought forward. It passed 3-2. We talked about rental units in the property. So hundreds of people could have opportunities to have affordable housing in Sonoma. When you have 8 units, it can be used over and over and over again rather than selling them. All of the issues that came up in this particular project, the story polls went up, et cetera, and it's interesting that all of a sudden you just decided to move. I just think it's a delay tactic.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Well, let me say this: the building that my office was in was sold. It was sold, and they told me it was sold on the day the escrow closed, and I had to move my office immediately. I do care about being on the city council. I don't care enough to move my office next door to a project so that I can get a continuance. That's insane, and to accuse me of that is shocking. And I am asking to get an FPPC letter. That's not destroying affordable housing in Sonoma. That's following the best advice that our city attorney has to offer. It's hardly a delay tactic. I want to be in compliance with the law, and I also want to vote on this matter, which is my right as an elected city council member. And so, if that's your implication, that somehow I caused my landlord to sell the building where I rent my office and then rented a space on purpose next to this.
Amy, you know that's nonsense. And I didn't
That's what you just said.
No, I did not say that. What I said What I said was that this to me, this is after the fact. Okay? This is just all after the fact. The fact that if I rented a building down there, I wouldn't have any issue just voting on it and talking about the things that we've already voted on this. It was a 3-2 vote. So how are you saying that? I don't even understand you.
I got advice from our attorney.
I got that part.
That is what he told me to do. I don't have other advice. The developer's attorney apparently wants to give me legal advice. I heard her advice, but I prefer to take advice from our own attorney who told me to get the letter.
Guess we've all had time now in the cat box. And would you like to share something?
Yeah, just a final general comment that if in our archives somewhere we don't already have a policy like this, I feel in light of all the issues we've had with development projects over the last couple of years, that proceeding with full confidence is the way that we should be going. And when something comes up, and I would support any of my colleagues if, whether I'm voting with you or not, if there was a question that was timely raised about whether it was appropriate to vote, I think it is more important to be certain than it is to try to rush a vote just because you're scared the result's going to change.
I'm not afraid the result's going to change, so maybe what we should do is on the tasting rooms, before that comes up again, we'll wait till I have an FPPC ruling on the tasting rooms.
We agreed to wait until we both got FPPC rulings on the tasting rooms. I sent in a letter immediately and they cleared me, and we would have waited as long as it took for that.
So we're off subject. David, you said you've made looking for a second?
And there was a second.
Okay, so roll call.
Vice Mayor Harrington?
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards?
No.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Councilmember Hundley?
Aye.
Mayor Agramonte?
The only reason I'm voting aye is because I have to trust my colleagues, and hope this is not a strategy. Thank you. Aye.
Motion carried 4-1. Thank you.
May I ask a question?
That's off an hour. That didn't fall back.
Well, we are taking public comments at 6 o'clock. So if anybody would like to, from the public who has a comment, you may speak. Pardon? Yeah, I'm opening up the public session.
This is Jennifer Hernandez. I spoke previously. I'm not speaking on the same agenda item. I am asking this council whether it has a policy for taking a vote on an item where one member actually says that there is a potential conflict. So could that have been a vote that is exactly the vote that you would like to not take, is my question, with respect to who can vote when one member says there's a conflict that they want to clear with the FPPC. Is that a 2-2? Is that what is the procedure for this council in that circumstance? This is a Housing Accountability Act case, and I'd like an answer to that question.
So is that something you have to check on? You don't have an answer at this point? I wouldn't imagine.
Our Mayor, as you know, at the close of public comment, staff will determine what it can
All
speak
right,
to.
thank you. Thank you.
Good evening again, Council. Larry Barnett, 637 5th Street East. Now that the Gateway project is no longer on the agenda, I'm going to make some comments on that because it's not on the agenda. Is that in order?
No.
Why? Well, it's not on the agenda anymore, so now I'm making the public comment period was opened
Through the mayor.
for items not on the agenda. This is not on the
Just
agenda.
direct it over to the attorney because
Yeah,
my
that's fine.
agenda
I'll go-
hasn't disappeared in time. It's still here, so it's on the agenda.
Well, Councilmember, Mayor Agramonte raised the question of should the public, at the point at which we were discussing the item, speak to both the item and the question of continuance. At that time, I responded both at that time. So at this point, the time to speak to the item that has been continued has expired. You we're taking public comment on that item.
No,
on both items.
Excuse me, I asked when I got up earlier whether this was simply commentary on the matter of the extension or the continuance, and I was told yes.
It's council prerogative. You can do either, whichever the council would like. You can do.
Now I'm in fantasy land. My question then is, does the council have an opinion? I certainly, since no one is coming up and saying yes or no, I'm going to say no. Thank you.
No to what? Okay, well, the previous speaker just did. No, you were speaking to this project by inference. Yes. I'm really not enjoying it. No, I'm not enjoying it.
No. Yeah, I see the smile on your face, and
Well,
I know that you're very happy.
I would prefer to show an aspect of friendliness. I
didn't know that was the friendly smile. So at this point, I've said I didn't know that was the friendly smile. Could I ask then for the advice from the city attorney?
Council, certainly the public, when the item comes back on December 3rd, the public will have an opportunity to speak to the item then.
Well, I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
Nothing is easy. Ken Brown, 1396 Lubeck Street in Sonoma. The Sonoma Valley Housing Group had a very positive meeting with the new planning director last week. It was a pleasure to talk to him. I look forward to working with him in the future. Everybody get out and vote tomorrow. I'm voting for you, Rachel.
Well, thank you so much for your political commentary in a civil room. Thank you.
Give me a break.
I am giving you a break, Mr. Brown.
Just a point of order before I start. Please don't start my time yet. I was hoping I could show you about a few pictures. There are 8 of them. I've been to Washington, D.C. for a whole month, and I'm going to show you some of the things I've shown my senators that might be helpful for you as you make decisions going forward. So I have a computer. I've got an adapter, if I could just hook in.
And what is the context of the?
The context is decisions you're going to be making eventually on these, quote, small cells.
Okay.
And a quick analysis that helps you understand something you don't yet understand.
All right. So the issue here is that's on our agenda. So if it's on the agenda, it can't be discussed.
Just 2 things I'm saying is that we will have specific things to say about the ordinance. So that I do understand is the agendized item. What I'm sharing with you is not dealt with on the ordinance whatsoever. It's just general education about it.
Mayor, I'd like to take a break. 5 minutes.
Thanks. I think that's a good.
No worries. Well, is it on now? Great. Thank you. My name is Paul McGavin. I actually live in Petaluma, and I'm going to share with you the experience I had in Washington, D.C. over the month of October when I went out and talked to our U.S. senators and our House members about some of the issues that you will be facing a little bit later on. And one of the things that we were specifically getting recognition of in our federal government is those with electromagnetic sensitivities, which is a disabling characteristic that's been recognized by the Federal Access Board since 2002. Those people have the right to face their government face-to-face, address their government face-to-face, to air their grievances about rules and policies that may drastically impact their ability to live in their communities and earn a living. So we are finding that we're getting that recognition because we're getting an accommodation, official accommodation in the U.S. Senate office buildings to create an environment that is free of electromagnetic radiation to allow us to bring in 3 people to meet with Senate staffers, people who couldn't be able to meet with these Senate staffers in any other way. And so this has actually been pitched to the Commerce Committee, as well as our Senators Harris and Feinstein, and the Maryland Senators Van Hollen and Cardin. And we're going to be successful in doing this. And what they're going to tell everyone is you cannot create an access barrier to the electromagnetically sensitive people. These are 25 million strong in the United States, by placing a small cell cell phone tower in the public rights of way within 2,500 feet of their homes. This is the truth of the matter. You can't forcibly expose into their homes the very same toxic agent that will force them to move out of those homes and also possibly be homeless. This is where our laws are completely in conflict right now. We have laws trying to help with the expansion of unnecessary cell phone towers into places where these people already live. And so there has to be care. There has to be the ability to accommodate these people. And that's exactly what we hope we'll talk about later. But this is what we did, is we got a lot of purchase on this idea. And we got a lot of people listening right now. And this FCC order that your ordinance tips its hat to may be dismissed. It may be gone by January 14th. You have to understand, you don't have to write your whole ordinance thinking this is for real. That FCC ordinance must be consistent with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
I think we're slipping off of our trip to D.C.
I'm done with my time.
Thanks.
We're good. Thanks.
So, Mayor Gamonte, if you want to close public comment, and then our next item would be to move to item 5.1, a public hearing.
Are there anyone wishing to speak about general issues, not cell towers? While I think it's a wonderful subject, but that's not what this is for at this moment.
I'd just like to, my name is Mark Marthaler. I'm on Spain Street on the east side. And I just there's lots of things to talk about, but I'm just thankful to have all of you on Team Sonoma. Just looking at that picture, the first one from 1880, and Sonoma's come a long way. So I'm happy to have really conscientious, caring people representing us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else want to speak? Seeing no one rise and approach the dais, I will close the public session.
So,
I think City Clerk.
with that, Madam Mayor, we'll be moving into public hearing 5.1. Conduct a public hearing to discuss, consider, and take possible action on introduction and first reading of an ordinance prohibiting all commercial cannabis activities except medicinal deliveries and finding this action to be exempt from an environmental review under CEQA Guidelines Section 15061B3.
At this time, I'd like to turn this over to the City Attorney.
Actually, I'll go ahead and take this one and lead and then turn to John if there's additional questions, our Assistant City Attorney. As council is well aware, over the last year, we have been involved in a process to investigate and explore a variety of cannabis policy decisions. In addition, part of what the council looked at was medicinal dispensary testing and manufacturing facilities. We held some workshops, did some tours, et cetera. And then at the May 30th meeting, the council considered the question and 3-2 vote directed staff to bring forward ordinances that prohibited all commercial cannabis activities with the exception of delivery for medicinal cannabis. And so on October 22nd, we did approve an extension of an urgency ordinance to give us time to finish this process. And in front of you tonight is the first reading of the ordinance that would prohibit all commercial cannabis activities excepting medicinal deliveries. And so with this, we would ask you to hold a public hearing and introduce in the first reading. And John Abachi, who's our Assistant City Attorney, has been guiding us on these cannabis issues and is here if there's any questions from council or community as well.
Does the City Council have any questions before we turn to Mr. Abachi? Okay.
On the vote tonight, it's just a simple majority, not unlike the urgency ordinance. That's a question.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? None? So I'd like to open this to the public here, public session. Seeing no one rise, I will, oh golly, okay, let's just.
Well, this is public comment on what you're voting on tonight, correct?
Absolutely.
Good,
And
I have a comment
And I
on
was
that.
going to close it because I didn't know you were going to be walking up here at your stride.
You know, I've been out canvassing and polling, and I'm slow to my feet, but thank you.
Thank
is
you.
Is this working? Yes, it is. Hi, Richard Silver, 95 Burn, The Springs. So my question is, the council has been quite clear on medicinal deliveries into the city proper for those individuals who need no question of its efficacy. So my question tonight, in considering what you're going to propose, limit medicinal cannabis or medical professional or not, why would you be opposed to a medicinal-only dispensary? As David and Gary can attest, being business guys, there is a cost inherent with delivering product to one or more households unless it's aggregated. So the question is, would you consider in your determination reconsidering having a medicinal-only dispensary? You can certainly regulate that. That's not a problem. It's like saying there's a beer and wine and there's a spirits, or you can have both. ABC does that, you know, as a matter of course. So in your deliberations, discussions, etc., please keep that in mind, because I don't know how many companies are delivering into the city. And for those who don't have the ability to go to SPG or any other dispensary, and we don't know what the costs associated for them if they are using it on a regular basis would be. So depending on how long you're going to make the prohibition, you can ask the Kennedys how well they did during Prohibition. That's another matter. Do keep those things in mind. I have 40 seconds left. So that's the end of it. Councilors? Councilman.
So seeing no one rise, I will close the public session. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
We've discussed this many times, so I'm not going to belabor it, but I still believe that having a local dispensary is good for local businesses, it's good for local residents. I don't think that delivery services are comparable, and I believe instead of passing this ordinance, that we should be passing an ordinance that sets out a path towards a carefully planned local dispensary, and I hope that next year we will have the opportunity to move in that direction.
Anyone else?
Just a same quick comment, which is I really hope over the next 2 years that we are able to, but I hope that we are able to bring this matter up again and consider it fully before the ballot measure comes on allowing unlimited marijuana dispensaries, because I think that would be disastrous for this town if that were to pass and there were no regulations whatsoever. And over the next 2 years, we have the opportunity to craft reasonable guidelines so that we can have an appropriate dispensary in this town, and I hope that we do that.
David?
Well, I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about it. This has come to the council a few times. There's been some 3-2 votes. I've always believed that Sonoma needs to do a little bit more homework before we have a dispensary in Sonoma, so that's why I voted no. I've told many people, even from the dais, that I do believe that on 8th Street, in other areas, in unincorporated areas, would be better for a dispensary. So I'm not against cannabis, but with the traffic situation in Sonoma, I feel it'd be very reckless to have a dispensary at this time, because traffic, if you look at the traffic studies, what it would do, the city of Sonoma is a very, very small town. And hopefully, we will come to some kind of a consensus with the county, have a dispensary in a close proximity of Sonoma. But with that said, I would like to make a motion for an ordinance of the Sonoma City Council of the City of Sonoma amending sections 19.50.032 and 19.10050 of Title 19 of the Sonoma Municipal Code by adding a prohibition on commercial cannabis activities with an exception for medicinal services and deliveries of medicinal, and finding these actions to be exempt from environmental review under CEQA guidelines section 15061B3.
So it would be a motion to introduce the ordinance.
Yes.
And I'll second that with a comment, is that the next council has 6 months to pull this together based on what we all voted for in the last time around on this. So you have a second.
So just one point of clarification, Councilmembers Edwards, the urgency ordinance, should council approve this ordinance going forward, then you would be putting in place permanent ordinance prohibiting commercial cannabis, and their urgency ordinance with the 6-month timeline would be going on the wayside.
And there is a provision in this ordinance that would repeal the 6-month urgency ordinance if this ordinance is adopted.
So I think we have a first and a second. Roll call?
Vice Mayor Harrington?
No.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
No.
Mayor Agramonte?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 3-2.
So I would like to explain something. I thank you, Mr. Silver, for mentioning the issues of delivery. I'm sorry, I don't remember the gentleman's name. He's the person who works with the county, who oversees the issues of
Tim
cannabis.
Ricard.
Yes, thank you. Oh, gosh, thank you so much. So he and I have had long discussions, and one of the things I said to him, I feel like I'm evolving. But what he has done, he's given me information on names of dispensaries in Sonoma, and I've asked him especially for free delivery dispensaries because people have asked about tinctures and oils, of which I said if this is something I might need in any time of my life, whatever time I have remaining, that I certainly would consider it after research. So I agree with the decision we've made. I'm very happy about that. And but I just want to let people know my answers have never changed. As I said, I'm evolving, and I do agree with the tinctures and oils. And it would be great if they could deliver them here for free. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Silver. Mr. Silver, no. No. If you would like to speak to someone, an attorney that would allow you to speak, you certainly can do that. But at this point, this is not going to continue to happen.
I think you need to read Brown.
Maybe I'll take some time to do that. Thank you. So I'm going to move on to I'm going to move on to 6.1.
Discussion and possible action on term and appointment process of city historian position and direction regarding future discussion of role and responsibilities, including but not limited to amending Resolution 04-2008.
Mayor Gramonte, members of the City Council, members of the community. So the item before you, let me give you a little background and then talk about a few places we're looking for some direction from council. In 2008, the City Council created the position of city historian. And there was a resolution created that outlined the role and the scope. And the overall is to coordinate the preservation of historical records and resources and maintaining a link between the city's past, present, and future. And as council well knows, the city historian is an honorary voluntary position with a 2-year term where the individual is available for a reappointment. And you have to be a resident of Sonoma, the city of Sonoma. So our current city historian, Mr. Demler, was appointed on November 7th, 2016. And so his term would be coming up on November 7th, 2018. And the resolution establishes the position, says that the city council will make the appointment for the city historian. But in practice, what's occurred is both the appointments of Mr. Demler and in the previous Mr. McHale were done with the mayor and vice mayor doing interviews and then bringing forward a recommendation. So that's been kind of the practice, though it's not outlined in the resolution. And then as council knows, in 2017, we redid the process and created kind of Group A and Group B commission appointment processes. And those commission appointments now are all kind of lined up with a February 1 start date. So staff is recommending that we have a 2-year term, but that we take the city historian position and we align it with the rest of your city commissions. Because what we do is we go out in November and we are recruiting and marketing, and it makes sense to staff that we also be taking the 2-year term of the city historian and wrapping it within that same process. And so our recommendation is that you continue Mr. Demler's current term till February 1 of 2019, and that we go out and market for this position in the same way we do the rest. And Mr. Demler would continue to serve until February 1, 2019. And as with any of the rest of our commissioners or appointments, Mr. Demler would be welcome to reapply as well. And his reappointment can be considered by the council in January when you look at all of those commissions. So that is one thing, is the kind of the term here is a decision we need from the council. And then there also is giving us some input about the process. Again, in the past, the mayor, vice mayor interviewed, and as I understand it, kind of brought forward a recommendation. Again, in light of what you've been doing with your city commission, you are not having interviews for your city commissioners. Council looks at the background and then the council is voting, but there's not a recommendation or nomination. So it really is a question of which way you want to deal, kind of which bucket you want to look at the city historian. And the last item is we've had this position for about 10 years now. And while staff doesn't have capacity to do this right now, we have looked around a little bit, and there are a number of historic cities that do have city historians, and it might be good to review the roles and responsibilities. So when you make your new appointment, if there's any refinement or changes that you want to do within what you're asking the city historian to do, we could look at maybe what occurs in some other agencies and see if there's any best practices. So the recommended action for you tonight is to extend the term of Mr. Demler to the February 1, align it with the other commission appointments, and then begin the marketing. Provide us direction on how you want to do the selection process, and then also if you want us to go look at other agencies and look at the roles and responsibilities. Alternatively, you could choose just to appoint Mr. Demler, or you could choose to not appoint and go back out and market for the position based on any timeline you give us. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does the council have any questions of staff? None? So at this point, I'm going to bring it out to the public for any comments. I have to wait my appropriate time. All right, I'm closing public session. And staff, there were no questions for you to answer, so council discussion for input and further direction.
I definitely think we should look at the role, both for the person who plays the city historian and, for the person playing that role and also for the city council. One thing that's concerned me about the city historian role is their ability to act on behalf of the city without prior authorization or permission or direction from this council by using the title city historian attached to ideas which haven't been endorsed by the city council. I think that's problematic. Certainly advocacy and zeal can be a good quality, but also when it's not at the direction of the city council, I think it can be a little rogue. So I want to make sure if we modify the policy, that it's clear when the person can use the title city historian in terms of advocating ideas that they are proponents of. I also think that we should line up the terms. I don't know if Mr. Demler's term needs to be extended until that time or not, but it makes sense to me to have all the terms for all of the appointees at the same time. Are the other questions or the advertising?
No, the other question is process, in terms of selection process, full council, mayor, vice mayor.
I'm fine with the mayor, vice mayor.
Anyone else?
I think it's amazing that we've had a city historian for 10 years, and I think that project has been going well, but I do think it's time to look at it again. I do share some of Vice Mayor Harrington's concerns about sort of, the outward-facing role in representing the city. I think having it in February with the rest of them makes sense. I think it should be a full council appointment, especially because it's going to be 2 years. And I'm, as far as whether we're going to do the recommended extension or alternate action number 2, I'm open to see what my colleagues say.
Gary?
So I'm happy to do a full council as well. And considering there's probably not that many people that could be valid historians in Sonoma, and the ones that are passing away and moving on. So I'm happy that Mr. Demler is willing to serve, and George, who was there before, was great. And hopefully somebody else comes along that has authentic history and is willing to do it. And I agree they shouldn't be jumping in and making decisions for the city, because that's not what they're supposed to do. But I think we can, with the help of the city manager, keep that curtailed. So I'd be willing to make a motion to approve Mr. Demler for another 2 years.
I'm sorry, the choice was February. Others?
And moving him in line with the other.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I do believe that it should be a full council decision. I think the mayor of Sonoma and the vice mayor is an honorary position. I was the mayor, and they run the meetings, but I would like to see it full council. I do support Robert Demler. I met with him today. Very knowledgeable. So I would second Gary's or council member Edwards's motion. And I think that was all the questions, right?
Rachel?
It's just roles and responsibilities. Do you want to look
I
at
agree
roles?
with council member Hunley and Vice Mayor Harrington that it should be in the discretion of the council.
I have a question. So was the motion to, I think I heard extend 2 years, or is it to extend till February and align it with the rest of the appointments?
Extend for 2 years, because there's going to be a lot to do in February. And I just think it's the right thing, and you're not going to find somebody who will be willing to step up.
And I would second that.
Okay. So could you remind me what I'm getting February 1st and The 2 years.
So there are three choices that I see
Right.
available to the council. One is, so Mr. Demler's term is up November 7th. So one would be to take the term, extend it from November 7th to February 1st, 2019, similar to what we did with the other commissions, kind of that interim extension, which then allows you to market everything at once and consider both reappointments and new applicants within kind of the same process in January. The other option is tonight you could just extend Mr. Dimmler for another 2 years. You could align it with a February date, or you could just do 2 years from
That
November
was the
7th.
motion aligning it with the February date, extending
Or
it
you-
for 2 years.
Okay. Or you could choose not to reappoint and just go market the position. Those are really the three choices that I see in front of the council. But it sounds like there is, just for clarity for council and community, Councilmember Edwards is making a motion to extend Mr. Demler's term now for 2 years, going through the February, or going just November 7th, 2018?
Went through the February and aligning it with
Okay,
the other.
aligning it, but then 2 years from February 2019 going forward. And there was a second by Councilmember Cook. So we could, I think we should take these in pieces, maybe. So maybe the first, so we have a motion on the term, which is one of the questions. Maybe we deal with the term first, and then we can go through process, and then the roles and responsibilities. Is there any more discussion on the motion on the table?
So are you taking the three? You're taking the three options, or you, as you've just explained them?
I guess just for clarity, I would suggest there's been a motion on the table to basically talk about the term first. And the motion on the table is to extend the term 2 years with a little extension to February 1. So the term would be February, starting now, starting November 7th, 2018, and it would go through January 31st, 2021.
Yes.
I do like aligning it with the February date, but I think if we're going to switch to a full council appointment process, then I'd like to start that this year. And I think that, one of the interesting things about sort of putting all our commission openings together, we get to have this huge advertising campaign to get people. And I know people that are interested in the position, and I think it would be interesting to see if Mr. Dimmler is interested in doing it again, or else who else is interested out there. But I think it would be nice to switch to the new council appointment system if we're going to be making changes to this position.
I think we had a motion and a second.
So roll call.
Vice Mayor Harrington?
No.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Councilmember Hunley?
No.
Mayor Agramonte?
No.
Thank you. The motion fails 2-3.
I'll make a motion to extend the appointment of Robert Demler through February 1st, 2019, and align the position with other council appointments. I guess we'll deal with the other portion later. So that's it.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Harrington?
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards?
No.
Councilmember Cook?
No.
Councilmember Hunley?
Aye.
Mayor Agramonte?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 3-2.
Okay, so Mr. Demler's term will be extended and aligned February to February 1, 2019. The next question be marketing. We will communicate generally the terms now and just denote that council is doing a review and that these are subject to change and refinement. Marketing as folks are interested.
Can I just ask amongst my colleagues, is there any interest in expanding the area where people can be selected to the valley? Right now it's just the city.
I would support that. I think that since this is like a niche specialty area, and it's getting harder and harder to live in the city, so I'd support that.
No.
No interest.
Made our decisions. Decision.
Just roles and responsibilities. This is a question, staff. Do you want us to spend a little bit of staff time and bring you back something that could come? It could come January or February. It may not, it could be something that could be a little bit of a work in process.
I'm fine with that.
That sounds good.
I don't think this is as, I'm just looking for general direction so we can move forward and we'll look at that piece. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you. Now, our city clerk.
With that, we're moving to item 6.2, discuss, consider, and take possible action on introduction and adoption of an urgency ordinance amending the Sonoma Municipal Code to add Chapter 5.30, supplementing wireless telecommunications facilities regulations in the municipal code and replacing references to Chapter 5.32 with Chapter 5.30 within Title 19, Integrated Development Regulations and Guidelines of the Sonoma Municipal Code, and finding this action to be exempt from environmental review under CEQA guidelines sections 15061B3, 15301, 15303, and 15305.
I'm going to recuse myself from this matter. My house is across the street from one of the proposed sites for the cell phone towers. Can I just ask, are there going to be council member comments or city manager comments? Because if there aren't, then I will leave the meeting. No? Council member comments? No?
So, Mayor Agramonte, I'm going to ask our Assistant City Attorney, John Abachi, who has been lead on this, and just for members of the community that we're still getting to know David Storr, our new Planning Community Services Director. I want to thank the two of them. There's been a lot of work that's been happening on cell towers, and so appreciate all of John's expertise and work on this. And then Mr. Storr has also kind of dove in the deep end and gotten up to speed quickly for tonight's meeting and also on Thursday's Planning Commission meeting. So with that, I'll turn it to Mr. Abachi.
So I'll be brief. Mr. Storr has put together a PowerPoint presentation. The urgency findings are in the ordinance that for the immediate preservation of health and safety, that the ordinance is necessary based on the Federal Communications Commission order on small cells specifically, which is scheduled to take effect January 14, 2019. The ordinance would supplement the existing wireless telecommunications ordinance in the municipal code, which was adopted prior to the time that small cell facilities, which are generally placed on utility poles within the right-of-way, prior to that technology becoming the predominant technology. Communications Commission order, and that's the background for the ordinance. I'll turn it over to Mr. Storr.
Good evening, Mayor Agramonte.
You have to move that closer.
Still learning. Here we go. Good evening, Mayor Agramonte, council members, David Storr, Planning and Community Services Director. I tried to distill as best as I could 38 pages of an ordinance down into 12 slides, and these are very simply bullet points, so I'll try to just be brief. The main point that I got out of what's going on here is that we're actually adding to what we already have, and what we already have is some. So in 1996, the Telecommunications Act was enacted, and your city, our city, adopted its own municipal code provisions, Chapter 5.32. The urgency ordinance before you this evening is to adopt an ordinance to complement or supplement that, if you will. Why is there a need today? And John just outlined for you just briefly that really since 1996 there's really been no substantive modifications to your 1996 ordinance per se. They do not specifically, 5.32 does not specifically address for wireless facilities in the public right-of-way. And again, the FCC has got a new order out there that will take effect January the 14th of next year. So we actually have some conditions that need to be addressed, one most of which is item number 4 here, regarding a shot clock, basically meaning that we need to act within certain timelines for certain types of wireless telecommunication facilities that come our way. And the concern also is compounded by the fact that we know that the telecommunications industry is changing quite rapidly. We've heard at a staff level that there could be as many as 24 to 29 small cell sites per square mile per provider in our community alone to provide coverage. That may or may not be true down to the exact number, but there's a concern that there's going to be a proliferation of these applications within the community, and we as staff will be required to respond to those. So the new Chapter 5.30 will introduce 4 types of applications, if you will. Mostly the current code that we have addresses cellular towers, if you will, on private property. But applications that will be coming before us in the future will be dealing with, for example, small cell sites, if you will, on towers, utility poles owned by PG&E and others. The wireless facilities that are not small cells are the ones that we would do in a conditional use permit, the Planning Commission dealing with cell towers. This might be like a faux tree or a tower inside a church steeple or tower, or some kind of method of concealing those larger cell towers that you see. And quite honestly, the 1996 Telecommunications Act was basically the wake-up call for public agencies to create their own process for conditional use permits or use permits to deal with these new towers. Co-location was not really a big deal at that time because there weren't that many towers out there in the first place to co-locate with. The last two, items number 3 and 4 on this particular slide, are dealing with co-location facilities that are required by California government code, and then the 4th bullet with the Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act. Again, these have both got timelines in which we as a city will need to act upon, going anywhere from 60 to 150 days, depending on the type of application that's submitted. The key components as far as regulating where these towers can go, nothing can go in a residential zone or in the Plaza Retail Overlay District. The second key component, if you will, is that there's a distance location of 1,500 feet apart from each particular wireless facility. The use permit process by the Planning Commission will be that which we can then look at applications. That is our process today under 5.32. It'll still be the same process under 5.30. And again, appeals from the Planning Commission would come to you as a City Council. The component that is kind of unique that has been established is that there will be a 10-year lifetime on these use permits, but there would be the possibility for extension as they are made to the Planning Commission. I'm guessing that within 10 years technology would have changed quite a bit, and so there may not be a whole lot of extension requests, probably new applications, if you will. Conditions of approval that we have will require FCC compliance regarding RF emissions. We'll be asking for a performance bond and also indemnification agreements, particularly if the sites are located in the public right-of-way. Again, the use permit regulations that we have currently will still be in the new code. The findings and conditions of approval will still be there. We've actually added to, in 5.30, the urgency ordinance, additional findings that need to be made. And I've kind of tried to memorize all of those right there. I haven't added up how many there are in red right now, but we do actually have a more extensive application process. And if there's a desire on the council's part for us to go into the minutiae, we can certainly do that. I'll turn that over to John because he's got them all memorized. I know he's got it done. But the neat thing about the new ordinance is that we will have the ability to retain consultants, whether it's for RF or noise, something that's related to coverage. We can certainly do that and have the applicants pay for that cost as a city. Currently, that is not the case. There are basically 16 design and development standards to comply with. When you add in design requirements for outside the public right-of-way and inside the public right-of-way, you have a lot more in this new urgency ordinance than we've had before. Again, primarily addressing the issues of cell tower facilities or wireless facilities in the public right-of-way, which we really don't have anything at present. So rather than going through and adding up how many different things and additive things that we've provided for you, I'll leave it at that and be able to answer any questions along with Mr. Abachi. This concludes my presentation.
To the public.
Hold that
Shock lock. Oh, hi, everybody. Lynn Marie DeVincent, 65 Guadalajara Drive. I want first to second Mark Marthaler's expression of gratitude to you all of you. It's been a tremendous push to get this on the calendar tonight, and we're so grateful. I also wanted to just direct some appreciation to Gary Edwards, who's leaving after many years of wonderful service. Mr. Edwards was part of the 6-year rent control project that I was also brought forward, and that helped protect our senior low-income housing. And much for your support through all those years. So all of you, Mayor Agramonte brought this forward quickly. Ms. Capriola, thank you. Thank you to Mr. Storer and Mr. Avachi. So tonight's valuable additional insurance policy to get us through to the end of the year. David commented earlier that this is a very, very small town, and that's true. And I've been studying the zoning map. I think I went into the wrong line of work being a poet. I just find all of this so fascinating now. I have to watch my clock. So this two-step process, one of the things I just wanted to mention quickly is that because of these residences being so close, these antennas is something that has seriously evaluated. And then, of course, the radio frequency serious problem. And the antenna's horizontal and vertical distances next to the residences. So these are all really specific technical things that I know the planning commissioners are going to be reviewing. So thank you so much. Again, we're very grateful that you've done all this work. Thank you.
Hi, Richard. Third time's a charm. Richard Silver, 95 Bernhardt Avenue. In the last 22 years has advanced dynamically and will continue to do so. When you hear the word tower, I think
Mr. Silver, I'm sorry, could you stay with the microphone? We can't hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
You can't? Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Okay. Well, okay, that sonorous rabbinical voice. When one hears the word tower, one thinks of something very tall and something very high up, like a stadium light on a tower. Now let me tell you what's going to happen with this new technology. The company that makes this is engaged in a stealth project called AI driverless vehicles. Coming soon to a theater near you. What that really means is for you to have a vehicle of any size or shape that moves without a driver, the technology at a very low base, not high up, and lots of them. Every 10 or 15 or 20 feet, there will be something in body space, not up on a tower. And whatever they emit can cause potentially grave harm to the residents and visitors of this town. So I respectfully ask the city attorney and the planning department to make sure in all the information they provide to you to make a cogent determination is where from ground level these will occur, how output, and whether you're in a vehicle or transiting on foot, bicycle, or public transit, what's the impact on you on the health and well-being of individuals and children and animals? Also, if it's near schools, what is the impact when you have large groups of people? This is not addressed in any of the well put together slides, and it is certainly not covered by the FCC because they have no interest in working with the large telcos to do anything. Where is the data? Where are the studies? Where is all of the input from people who have serious medical and health impacts from EMFs? Please consider all of this in your determination in putting a regulation together. It's more serious than tobacco. It's more serious than alcohol. It's more serious than the juuling, the vaping that goes on at the high school. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Silver.
My pleasure.
Good evening, Mayor Agramonte and City Council. Carol Marcus, 873 First Street West. I'm pleased that the city is choosing to enact an ordinance that places restrictions on communication companies' installation of close proximity microwave radiating antennas. I'm also pleased that the proposed urgency ordinance prohibits the installation of these devices within residential districts, as is the case with the current ordinance. I believe that there are reasons for this restriction, not the least of which is that the facts are yet undetermined as to the health hazards, the increased exposure to higher radio frequencies that 5G technology presents. Through its municipal code, the city encourages, in fact mandates, the incorporation of housing in both the mixed-use and commercial zoning districts. Both of these zoning districts require a minimum of 50% of the total area of the project be devoted to housing unless waived by the Planning Commission for a very specific list of reasons. Allowing microwave radiating antennas in commercial and mixed-use zoning districts is inconsistent with prohibiting them in residential districts. In fact, because higher densities and greater heights are allowed in these zones, it is conceivable that the density of the housing would be greater and in closer proximity to the source of these radio frequency or electromagnetic waves. At this coming Thursday's Planning Commission meeting, the 3 commercial locations being proposed for the installation of these microwave radiating antennas all have housing in close proximity, if not incorporated into the commercial structures themselves. Given that these microwave radiating antennas are not permitted within residential districts for good reason, they ought not to be allowed in commercial or mixed-use zoning districts either. One of the specific reasons I alluded to that the Planning Commission may waive a housing requirement in the commercial or mixed-use zone is the presence of uses or conditions incompatible with residential development on or adjacent to the property for which a new development is proposed. I can foresee this being used as a reason for the Planning Commission to waive the housing requirements in these zones. I don't believe that this consequence is what our municipal code intends.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor Agramonte, Council, and Colachitas, 14 Hacienda Drive. I want to join some people here in opposing the installation of 5G microwave radiating towers anywhere in Sonoma. Opening the door is just opening the door to proliferation for these things. As a new technology, it's really frightening to think about the implications of this. Verizon has requested permission to install 10 5G towers in the residential neighborhoods and commercial areas. 7 will go into the residential neighborhoods as close as 30 feet from homes. The 3 commercial cell towers will go in commercial areas with homes nearby. These towers emit dangerous radiation, which is harmful to life, especially the young, very young, and the elderly. Studies have shown adverse health effects to this microwave radiation. A few of these health effects would be increased cancer rates, hormonal suppression, depression, and reduced fertility. Due to the proven health hazards, property values would decrease by 20%. So where Verizon profits, we lose. So thank you for putting the brakes on this and joining other communities throughout the state. Yeah, throughout the state to take a closer look at this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Logan Harvey, 578 Esmadera Drive. I'd like to speak in support of the amendments to the planning code. I think that this is a really smart way to give citizens a lot more input by requiring use permits for each one of these. We don't know the real effects of these cell phone towers. A lot of studies have shown that they could be potentially dangerous, and so we have to take a little breath with this, give it a little bit more time, allow more time for study, and allow citizens to weigh in as much as possible on these. So I think it's the right decision, and the council is making a good move here.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey.
Hey everybody, my name is Sally Romer. I live at 411 Claudia Drive. Can you hear me? Hi. It sounds to me, and I don't know a lot about this, I only know that the cell towers that you're considering allowing to be in Sonoma do emit radiation, and I know that that is unhealthy. Clearly, it's unhealthy for young children and adults. Considering doing this, you are apparently beginning to put the brakes on it. I wish you would put the brakes on it completely. I'm happy to hear people talking about the effects. But you have to consider the bees. I think it's insane to consider bringing in something that is there's so little research on the health effects, and I don't actually understand what the need is here. I know it profits Verizon. Not sure what good it does anyone else.
Is there anyone?
Hello, Mark again, Marthaler from 146 East Spain Street. Don't have a prepared statement, but I'm just going to go off of what the previous woman writing. There actually has been when I hear all the health issues that are brought up, all the health concerns, and as a result, the prospective lowering of your property value as a result of these things being in front of your house, I just think lawsuits. Okay, so what we from 1880, that picture, we've come a long way, and I almost envy you, but I almost don't envy you for the position you're in because you have a lot of responsibility. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for the urgent ordinance. It's going to save the day, and I feel sorry for other communities who are behind the ball on this. Paul is going to have just spot on things to pay attention to, please. Liability is where it's at. Okay, so in 2016, when this similar idea of putting cell phone or cell towers went through legislature, Governor Brown vetoed it because he found out that who's going to pay for it? These things were going to go on. Basically, the state was going to pay for health problems or any lawsuits coming. It wasn't going to go to Verizon. It's going to go to the state. So what's happening here in Sonoma and in other cities is Verizon wants to install these facilities on city light poles or PG&E utility poles, anything but their own poles. And they want to, the research has been known, the health hazards have been known, and the largest get their project going and have somebody else pay for the problems that will occur. So reliability, liability, liability, lawsuits. We have a responsibility to do everything we can to preserve what we have built up to in our city, the good life, property values.
Much for your comments.
Hi, I'm Diane Lumiere at 113 Merida Drive. I've been doing fairly recently a lot of research on this as well. And one of the most compelling things I've heard recently is that a physician testified before her city and stated that we are in effect a clinical trial as human beings on this issue. And in every other medical example, you have to have implied consent to become a part of a medical trial. And in this case, we have no consent. We have no voting power. We have nothing here. We are just the guinea pigs to seeing what technology is. And it would be like the equivalent of turning your microwave on and leaving it on 24/7. Things get very cooked in that situation. And we have no defense in this case. There's no human defense against this kind of microwave energy. So it's really compelling that just as citizens in a city that we love and cherish, that we have absolutely no power to stop an outside corporation from coming in and saying, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Paul McGavin, and I might ask for another minute or two because I have some very good information. So anyway, I'm going to let you say that we absolutely support, my daughter Kira and I both support the urgency ordinance that's being put together by Sonoma. We've been talking to them since mid-August, and they've done an excellent job at learning from the other cities and trying to protect their residents. So we want to just thank you so much for that. As the two-step process goes, I think it's urgency ordinance followed up by a final ordinance. That's what Mill Valley is doing. I'm not sure what's happening here. But if you do, you have an opportunity to look at a few things that you didn't have a chance to look at this first time through. What is on this sheet of paper? It is essentially the idea of doing a trade-off of power output and distance. The one thing to understand is that at some point, this radiation drops from the antenna and reaches the street. It's at that point that the radiation is the highest, and then you have to understand what the impact of people are at that point. So we went and measured all the distances with a 15-degree angle dropping down from the antenna. We have 25, 50, 100, and 150 feet. The problem is the whole ordinance is looking at limiting the height. If you truly want to protect people, you want them higher. This is what you really want to think through. Because what happens as you go out with distance, it keeps dropping in power. You want to have, by the time it reaches the ground or the second story window, it's not of a power that might damage someone. When you are at heights of what you're talking about in your ordinance of 25 to 35 feet, you're absolutely putting people in harm's way. How do we know? I measured a cell tower, 9 years exposure in Sebastopol. It's all on my website, scientistsforwiretech.com/Sebastopol. You can see a quick video there of everybody telling about what's going on in that apartment building. People are dying out of that apartment building. Young people, 31, 27, and they're getting cancers and all kinds of illnesses at levels that are just fractions of what the FCC allows. So when you hit the ground here, this is the 5th Street West, 25 feet up. Where this house is, 170,000 radiation units. It'll be 10 times higher at the second-story bedroom window. That
You
is
have 30 seconds.
I know. I'm telling you for sure. This is why you want to have a 150-150 solution. Most people are familiar with 50-50 things. Think of 150-150. You'll want these at least 150 feet higher than the roof line of anything within a 1,500-foot radius. And then you want to say, hey, where anybody ever is, no higher than 150 microwatts per square meter. That will actually protect people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sir, do we have anyone else who would like to speak? Seeing no one rise, I will close public comment. Questions from the councilors? And I don't know if you've heard anything to respond to.
Yes, I think a couple of comments would probably be in order, just to kind of edify as far as the law and also what this ordinance does provide for. Under federal law, no state or local government may regulate the placement, construction, and modification of such facilities on the basis of the environmental effects of radio frequency emissions, to the extent that such facilities comply with the FCC regulations concerning such emissions. So that means that cities are not able to make decisions on the basis of radio frequency RF emissions, as long as those facilities comply with the federal regulations. So cities are in the place to ensure that there is compliance with the federal regulations for the RF emissions limits. And in fact, in the ordinance that is before the council tonight, that do ensure that compliance to the extent that the city can. For instance, when a provider makes an application, required to have a certified RF emissions study that shows that the facility would be within the RF emissions level. And then there is a provision for the city to retain an independent consultant to confirm that. And then there are also conditions of approval that would of years and certification, and that the planning director, if the planning director sees a need, can also require testing. So we've tried to build into this ordinance those provisions that cities can exercise in order to ensure that it can meet the standards that are the constraints for cities for RF level emissions.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Oh, David?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. First thing I'd like to thank everyone who commented. I totally agree, and I will the ordinance. But I told myself I wasn't going to get on the soapbox tonight, but it's election night tomorrow. That was said when somebody said that we don't have any power. We have a lot of power. It's called the ballot box. 6 years ago, when I was just newly on the city council, we had AT&T come in and want to put in a web tower, cell tower over. Young, I was serving with 5 different seasoned council members who, Councilmember Barbos, and we all talked about it that night, and we were all angry because we did not want that cell tower over at Sebastiani. Anybody else who could see it. So what did we do? We voted no on the cell tower. What happened? Litigation. Then we have to sit in a little building. And just so people know, when the council's in closed session, it's usually because we're being sued by somebody. Well, one thing that I found out at that point is there's no local control when it comes to things like this. It's sad. But my point, getting back to, we do have the power. You have Congress members who, surprisingly enough, if you really look at the numbers and who gets reelected over and over, but these just don't seem to be issues. It's the local candidates that are running for city council, that the pink doors and all these things, they get so much attention. But then something serious like this, I have 4 children. This is something goes on with the blind's eye. The ballot will be the ballot tomorrow. Most individuals that are on the federal government will get reelected, probably with high percentages in the 70%, because everybody is deflected to the local. And we have no power. So what does that tell you? That tells you that the system is the system. So I would never want to hear that again, that we don't have the power, because we have the power. We have Congress members, and we have a President of the United States. These are people that we really need to tell, we don't want this or we don't want that. I respect you coming to us. I'm going to try to do everything in my power to make it safe. I probably assume that these are done by the federal government for different reasons, but I was elected for local control, and I stand for local control. So I will be supporting this urgency, and I won't get too much on the federal government. But I think it is time that we do stand up. We do stand up, and we start asking the questions. I love the congressman who represents our area, so I'm not calling him out. But I think you do need to write letters to your Congress members and tell them, hey, our city council is sitting here saying their hands are tied. We are trying to do the best job that we can, but there's not a lot we can do. Except for tonight, we can pass this urgency ordinance, which I will be supporting.
Thank you. Any other comments?
So as far as your congressman, just follow the money. You have to look and see how much Verizon has given our congressmen, how they share money, etc. But somebody brought up the issue about a microwave. I haven't had a microwave in my house since 1994. Toss it out the window. There's no need, because I'd rather cook real food on real fire. And we have a rule in our house is that if we have a gathering, you check your phones at the door. And that's how it should be, in my opinion, at schools. It should just be that way, because why do you want to be at a party and have somebody doing that, right? Or at dinner or at a restaurant, etc. So it's just something that you won't find me doing unless I have my kids are trying to get a hold of me or something. But it's just something that we're so addicted to it. On city council, I used to love getting paper, but we get these units, and so now I have this plus my personal computer plus my cell phone. That it's like we're inundated with it, and I would rather not be. So I'm going to be supporting this ordinance tonight. I don't know how much we can get done, but one of the things that I'd like to see in the city of Sonoma is I'd like to see every single power line in Sonoma, every power pole gone in our 2.8 square miles at some point, because then there's nothing to attach antennas to. And it's something that all new development, everything that we should do, we should be insisting. Nice shot. That's just, my daughter would be doing the same thing. But it's something that I think that we need to be thinking way further out than just this particular issue. And I think the aesthetics of everything that goes on with really funky looking trees that looked like they were blown over and so on, they were actually cell towers. I don't remember the exit, but I can give that to the city staff. But there were these trees that just looked like hell. But they were actually cell units. And so it looked like this giant bush. And that's covering Highway 80 cell traffic. Do you know which one I'm talking about? Yeah. And I was really surprised, because as we've been talking about this, and as all the folks that have been coming to speak about this issue, I noticed it even more. And back when I was on the SBCAC and Planning Commission, we had the cell towers at the high school, the cell towers at the veterinary building down the way. We had all these wind machines out in the vineyards that were becoming cell towers. There's lots of them around. If you really look, we're already inundated. And I think it's something that we're forced with it. And I think the issue about the driverless cars, I totally agree with that. And I'm not a big fan of all of that stuff. It can be driverless just as you and check your car before you get into city limits would be great. But they're going to do it anyway. And getting back to David's comment about Congress people and I don't buy into that. So I'll leave it at that, and I will be supporting tonight.
Thank you to everyone who's been working on this issue. Thank you, staff, for working hard to put this together. I will be supporting this tonight, and I look forward to pass a permanent ordinance. And if the mayor doesn't mind, I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to introduce and adopt an urgency ordinance of the City of Sonoma amending Title V of the Sonoma Municipal Code to add Chapter 5.30, supplementing wireless telecommunication facilities regulations in the Municipal Code and replacing references to Chapter 5.32 with Chapter 5.30 within Title 19 of the Municipal Code, and finding this action to be exempt from environmental review under CEQA.
And I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. May I have roll call, please?
Councilmember Henley.
Aye.
Mayor Agramonte.
Before I make my vote, I'd like to say thank you, Anne Marie. When you called me, and I thought, oh no, what the heck is this? Well, now I know what the heck it is. We're totally versed on this. You need to understand.
Thank you. Motions carries 4-0.
So, let's see. And before I start with city manager's comments and announcements, I'd like to say and repeat, we had a dedication by Councilmember Edwards for Tom Mello, and this evening is dedicated in his honor. Also, city manager comments and announcements.
None this evening, thank you.
All right. So at this point, I'm adjourning. Oh.
7:30.
No, are you kidding?
Maybe we should always start at 5:30.